Amnesty International's 2024 monitoring shows a 32% increase in recorded executions globally compared to 2023, but these numbers don't include what happens behind the closed borders of North Korea, where thousands are believed to be executed annually in complete secrecy. The scale of North Korea's execution program became even more chilling in 2025, when defectors testified at UN human rights sessions in Seoul that the regime was executing people for distributing K-pop music and South Korean media content. In June 2025, these testimonies revealed that Kim Jong-un's government continues to use public firing squads, with one documented case forcing a crowd of 25,000 residents to watch 9 people executed in the northern city of Hyesan. While the world debates the ethics of capital punishment, one nation operates what may be the most extensive death penalty system on Earth, executing citizens for crimes ranging from political dissent to stealing wire from factories. North Korea uses capital punishment for many offenses, including grand theft, murder, rape, drug smuggling, treason, espionage, political dissent, defection, piracy, consumption of media not approved by the government, and proselytizing religious beliefs that contradict the practiced Jewish ideology. Today, we're pulling back the veil on North Korea's death penalty system, examining how it evolved from post-war reconstruction tool to instrument of total state control. Understanding North Korea's current use of capital punishment requires examining its historical development through decades of isolation and authoritarian rule. The foundation of North Korea's death penalty system was established in the early years following the Korean War armistice in 1953, when Kim Il-sung consolidated power and began implementing the Juche ideology that would define the state's approach to justice. During the 1950s and 1960s, executions were primarily used to eliminate political opponents and those deemed threats to the new socialist order. The system expanded significantly during the 1970s as North Korea faced economic challenges and increased international isolation. A December 2007 amendment to the Penal Code extended the death penalty to many more crimes, including non-violent offenses such as fraud and smuggling. This expansion marked a critical turning point in North Korea's use of capital punishment, transforming it from a tool primarily used against political enemies to a broad mechanism of social control. The amendment came during a period of severe economic hardship and famine recovery, when the government sought to maintain strict control over an increasingly desperate population. Since 2011, under Kim Jong-un's leadership, the scope of capital offenses has continued to expand, with new laws targeting cultural crimes and foreign influence. In January 2023, the government enacted the Pyongyang Cultural Language Protection Act, banning the use of language that is South Korean in style or appears to have foreign influence, setting punishments of 6 years or more of forced labor, and even the death penalty in some cases. This represents one of the most recent expansions of capital punishment, demonstrating how North Korea continues to broaden its definition of crimes worthy of execution. The current scope of North Korea's death penalty system is staggering in both breadth and secrecy. North Korea has not abolished the death penalty or implemented a moratorium on executions, nor has it limited the application of the death penalty to the most serious crimes. According to the Advocates for Human Rights 2024 report, the regime maintains one of the world's most extensive lists of capital offenses. Human Rights Watch collected testimony in 2012 that revealed authorities executed persons for crimes that included stealing metal wire from a factory and taking plate glass, illustrating how minor property crimes can result in execution. The situation has only intensified in 2025. In November 2024, reports emerged that Kim Jong-un issued direct orders to North Korea's security ministries to establish clearer criteria for both public and private executions, suggesting a systematic approach to expanding the death penalty apparatus. By June 2025, North Korean defectors providing testimony at UN human rights sessions in Seoul described witnessing executions of people whose only crime was sharing South Korean entertainment content. These testimonies, collected from over 500 North Korean escapees, paint a picture of a state where cultural crimes are treated as seriously as violent felonies. Recent reports from the Korea Institute for National Unification indicate that Kim Jong-un's regime has allegedly expanded its list of crimes punishable by death, though the secretive nature of the North Korean government makes precise documentation challenging. Working knowledge of the topic depends heavily on anonymous sources, accounts of defectors, and reports by Radio Free Asia. Despite these limitations, defector testimonies and satellite intelligence suggest that North Korea executes far more people annually than any official statistics would indicate. The 2025 testimonies specifically describe execution methods including firing squads conducted before crowds of tens of thousands of forced spectators. The Pyongyang Cultural Language Protection Act encourages authorities to use public trials and executions to awaken the masses, with reports of public trials conducted in Ryanggang province under the law in March and April. This practice of public execution serves both as punishment and as a deterrent tool, designed to reinforce state authority and discourage dissent among the population. The scale of these public spectacles has reached unprecedented levels in 2025, with testimonies describing mass forced attendances where entire city populations are compelled to witness executions. These events transform executions from judicial proceedings into theatrical displays of state power, where the message sent to survivors becomes as important as the punishment of the condemned. North Korea's death penalty system operates within a broader framework of totalitarian control that makes it fundamentally different from capital punishment in other nations. North Korea's criminal code stipulates that the death penalty can be applied only for a small set of crimes, but these include vaguely defined offenses such as crimes against the state and crimes against the people that can be applied broadly. This legal ambiguity gives authorities enormous discretionary power to determine what constitutes a capital offense. The country's judicial system lacks the fundamental protections found in most legal frameworks worldwide. There is no independent judiciary, no right to legal counsel of choice, and no transparent appeals process. Trials are typically brief, secretive affairs where the outcome is often predetermined. The concept of due process, as understood in international law, simply does not exist within North Korea's legal system. Political considerations heavily influence judicial decisions, with the severity of punishment often depending more on the perceived threat to state authority than on the actual crime committed. The role of ideology in North Korea's death penalty system cannot be understated. The Juche ideology, which emphasizes self-reliance and absolute loyalty to the Kim family regime, frames any opposition or deviation as not merely criminal, but as an existential threat to the nation itself. This ideological framework justifies the execution of individuals for crimes that would be considered minor infractions or protected activities in most other countries. The system treats ideological crimes, such as consuming foreign media or expressing doubt about the regime, as seriously as violent felonies. People under sentence of death in North Korea also experience poor detention conditions, including verbal abuse, according to the Advocates for Human Rights. The conditions on death row reflect the broader human rights crisis within North Korea's prison system, where inadequate food, medical care, and sanitation are commonplace. These conditions effectively constitute additional punishment beyond the death sentence itself. When examining North Korea's death penalty system in a global context, the contrast with international trends is stark and revealing. While global advocacy continues to push toward full abolition of the death penalty worldwide, North Korea moves in the opposite direction. As of 2024, 144 countries have abolished the death penalty in law or practice, representing a clear global trend toward abolition. The United Nations has repeatedly called for a worldwide moratorium on executions, with the UN General Assembly passing multiple resolutions supporting this position. In contrast to this global movement, North Korea not only maintains capital punishment, but continues expanding its application. While Amnesty International's monitoring shows executions increased by 32% globally in 2024, this figure doesn't include thousands believed executed in China, North Korea, and Vietnam due to these countries' secrecy surrounding their execution practices. This places North Korea among a shrinking group of nations that actively resist international pressure to limit or eliminate capital punishment. The secrecy surrounding North Korea's executions also contrasts sharply with global trends toward transparency. Most retentionist countries now provide at least basic statistics about their use of capital punishment, but North Korea provides no official information about its execution practices. This lack of transparency violates international standards that call for open reporting of death penalty statistics and procedures. Regional comparison reveals North Korea's isolation on this issue. South Korea abolished capital punishment and removed it from its military criminal code, while other East Asian nations like Mongolia have formally abolished the death penalty entirely. Even China, despite maintaining capital punishment, has reduced the number of capital offenses and moved toward greater procedural protections. North Korea's expansion of capital crimes and public execution practices place it increasingly outside even regional norms. The international community's response to North Korea's death penalty practices has included sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and documentation efforts through UN special rapporteurs and human rights organizations. However, North Korea's isolation and rejection of international oversight make meaningful change through external pressure extremely difficult. The regime views international criticism of its death penalty system as interference in its internal affairs and consistently rejects calls for reform. The future of capital punishment in North Korea remains deeply intertwined with the broader question of political change within the Hermit Kingdom. Unlike other authoritarian systems that have gradually reformed their use of the death penalty while maintaining power, North Korea's leadership appears to view executions as essential to maintaining control. The recent expansion of capital punishment to include cultural and linguistic crimes suggests the regime is actually intensifying rather than moderating its approach. Current trends indicate that without significant political change in North Korea, the death penalty system will likely continue expanding rather than contracting. The regime's increasing concerns about foreign cultural influence, particularly from South Korea and the broader international community, may drive further criminalization of activities that connect North Korean citizens to the outside world, as global isolation of the regime increases through sanctions and diplomatic pressure. The leadership may respond by tightening internal control mechanisms, including broader application of capital punishment. However, the sustainability of such an extensive death penalty system faces long-term challenges. The economic costs of maintaining vast detention and execution infrastructure, combined with the loss of human resources through widespread executions, may eventually force practical limitations on the system's scope. Additionally, as information about the outside world continues to penetrate North Korean society through various channels, the regime may find it increasingly difficult to justify extreme punishments for nonviolent crimes to its own population. The international community continues to document these abuses and maintain pressure for change, recognizing that while immediate reform may be unlikely, establishing a clear record of violations remains important for future accountability and justice. The eventual reunification of Korea, or significant political transformation within North Korea, will likely require addressing the legacy of mass executions and human rights violations that characterize the current system.